3 years after Wuthering Heights was first published under the pen name Ellis Bell, Charlotte Bronte, the sister of its true author, Emily Bronte, issued a correction in its new edition. The immature but very real powers revealed in Wuthering Heights were scarcely recognised, she wrote in 1850. Its import and nature were misunderstood. That sentiment holds up with the arrival of Wuthering Heights, writer-director Emerald Fennell's fast and loose adaptation of the beloved book. I now understand why she opted to put the title in quotation marks, because this is by no means a faithful homage. It's shallow fan fiction that has more in common with E.L. James's 50 Shades of Grey than Bronte's unflinching portrait of obsessive love, vengeance, the violence of class, racism and generational trauma.
I suppose you shall fall in love with me. I suppose you shall fall in love with you.
If, as Fennell has said, this is her teenage recollection of Wuthering Heights, then it speaks more to the white affluence of her upbringing than Bronte's novel. The writer-director dispenses with the book's beginning and end, as well as multiple characters who fully contextualise the toxic atmosphere of the eponymous estate. Instead, she opens with Black and the grunting sounds of a man. Is he having sex? Nope. He's being strangled to death in a contrived public hanging scene, gleefully watched by young heroine Catherine Earnshaw, Charlotte Mellington, as other kids laugh at his stiffy, and the camera follows some common folk engaging in promiscuity. This sets the highly sexualised tone for the rest of the film, charting Cathy's sexual awakening from child to spinster, as her father, Mr. Earnshaw, calls her once Margot Robbie takes over the role. There's been valid criticism of the whitewashing of Heathcliff, a role shared by Owen Cooper and Jacob Elordi, who washes up at Wuthering Heights via Mr. Earnshaw, no longer the novel's loving adopted parent, but redrawn in, from the book, Hindley Earnshaw's revolting drunken likeness, Hindley being his son, who doesn't appear in the film. But Robbie's casting is equally ill-fitted. The novel's Catherine is a dark-haired, dark-eyed teen whose unruly stubbornness and violent love that she shares with a similarly aged Heathcliff speaks volumes for their juvenile nature. Robbie looks amazing for 35, but here her age works against the authenticity of Catherine's youthful recklessness. She struggles to exude the naivety of a teen who thinks you can have her cake and eat it, by having both Heathcliff and the social status of wealthy Edgar Linton, Shazad Latif, after he moves into the nearby Thrushcross Grange and proposes. Robbie and Elordi are obviously very attractive people, and with a number of steamy sex scenes shoehorned in, you'd be forgiven for thinking this amounts to palpable chemistry, but it all feels too forced, like a sales bin, smutty romance novel come to life, working too hard to hide the erasure of Bronte's far more complex ideas about the hell of societal convention.
Kiss me, and let us both be damned.
That's due in large part to the script, which ignores the gothic supernatural elements and too often paraphrases Bronte's earnest, expressive dialogues in key scenes. Fans hoping to hear Catherine's "if all else perished and he remains" speech will be left wanting. It also strips away the compelling social commentary about Heathcliff's ethnic ambiguity and sanitizes the brutality of his revenge narrative, softening Heathcliff's aggressive cruelty into something coldly charismatic. His Yorkshire accent isn't bad.
I do what all rich men do. I live in a big house.
But Elordi's performance recalls his Euphoria character Nate more than Bronte's antagonistic hero. Supporting players like Nellie, Hong Chow, and Isabella Linton, Alison Oliver, Fair Besser. While Nellie's backstories change from servant to bastard companion, Chow affords Nellie a quiet composure as a vulnerable witness to, and sometimes meddler in, Catherine and Heathcliff's destructive romance.
Heathcliff is gone, you must accept it.
As Edgar's ward, she's his sister in the book, Oliver nails Isabella's sickly sweet innocence. Even as the film weirdly pushes Isabella to evoke the spirit of Bronte's Catherine, she brings a deviant edge to her infatuation with Heathcliff. It's a wonder they didn't just cast the Irish actor as the lead. The same could be said for Latif, who, as a mixed British-Pakistani actor, better fits the profile of Heathcliff. The novel even describes him as a little lascar, the name for a sailor from the Indian subcontinent, where Bronte's Edgar is laced with snobbish hostility towards Heathcliff, thus becoming a mighty catalyst for the lowborn lads to exact revenge against him. Latif's iteration barely registers. He rarely engages with his rival, and, as with the silk wallpaper modelled after Catherine's skin, serves merely as window dressing. His colourblind casting ticks the box for diversity, but Fennell gives him little character to work with. Her approach to the class divide feels somewhat hackneyed too. The lilt of the Yorkshire accent is relegated to the lower class, where Fennell throws in sexual deviancy as a marker too. Film and TV frequently stereotype the Yorkshire accent in this way, but the Earnshaws aren't landed gentry. They didn't require posh accents like the Lintons to reinforce the upstairs-downstairs dynamic. Cinematographer Linus Sandgren does capture the tumultuous beauty of the Yorkshire Moors and the stormy atmosphere of the Heights estate, but the production design of Thrushcross Grange is jarringly anachronistic. It becomes a gothic Barbie dreamhouse, derogatory, with the costuming, though beautiful, more in keeping with an Alice in Wonderland film. Throw in Charlie XCX's pulsating original songs and Anthony Willis's overwhelming score, and you've got a bombastic world that does more to distract than solidify the emotional journey of these iconic literary figures. I don't believe all book-to-screen adaptations need to be carbon copies, and maybe, if you haven't read the novel, Wuthering Heights will work for you, but I must have read a different book in my teens than Fennell, because her vision obscures my memory of it, as it will for many Wuthering Heights fans out there.
Are you feeling quite right?
What? Oh, yes, fine.
Wuthering Heights is getting a 3. It's a superficial facsimile of Emily Bronte's daring novel. Its world-building hovers between keen-eyed and grossly ostentatious, with the gothic soul of the story exercised in favour of an overly romanticised script that streamlines the plot, characters and thematic weight. While Hong Chow and Alison Oliver offer assured support, Robbie and Elordi are wildly miscast as tragic lovers Heathcliff and Catherine.
I cannot sit here all day talking nonsense with you. After all, the Lintons may call on me at any moment.
Hey folks, that was IGN's review of Wuthering Heights, and here to chat with me about it a little bit more is the writer of that review, Hanna Flint. Hanna, thanks for being here. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm here in London. The weather is quite wuthering, so maybe it's representing my stressed brain at watching this film.
Ordering the correct weather for a movie is the latest marketing campaign. First question is because you were pretty keen to take this one on, like why was this a movie that you were excited to review?
So I was born in London, but I moved to a place called Doncaster, which is in South Yorkshire, and I spent much of my teen years there, and that's where I read Wuthering Heights. And the Bronte sisters are from West Yorkshire, a place called Haworth, which is only about just over an hour away from where I live. So for me, having this like epic Yorkshire story being told on screen is obviously something that I'm very keen about, and I adore the book. I think it is one of the greatest stories ever written. The tagline for the film says the greatest love story. I'd argue it's the greatest revenge story of all time. So I think I was really keen to review it, especially as, Emerald Fennell, I loved Promising Young Woman. I liked Saltburn, and with all the fanfare around it, and certainly when the casting was made, I was just really desperate to know, did it do it justice? No. Short answer.
No. Yeah.
Review, that's all you need.
Watch the review that we just watched. No, I don't think so. Yeah, so I also want to talk about just adaptations in general, just a little more generally, because I'm always fascinated to see how a book gets squeezed into a feature-length runtime, particularly a book that means something, to me. But what do you think are some of the essential things that a good adaptation actually needs to do?
I think a good adaptation doesn't need to be a carbon copy. It's certainly, if you're doing a book to screen, it can certainly adapt to the medium in which it's being portrayed. There's so much stuff in a book that you couldn't really put on screen because it's just a lot of dialogue, it's heavy. So you do have to streamline it to an extent. But I would argue that what it needs is to really channel the soul, the essence of the book. What is this book trying to say? And how can we say that on the big screen through the cinematic medium? And as long as it captures that, I think that's a really good adaptation. I wrote a piece a while ago about classic literature to kind of high school films. That's a really interesting place to situate them. So if you see something like Clueless, which is based on Emma, now that's not a carbon copy, but it fundamentally gets the elements of this story and puts it in a modern framework. That works. I'd say one that is really interesting, an adaptation and how much that's diverges from the source material, even the original source material. So Wicked is a musical that obviously is based on a book by Gregory Maguire, and that obviously is based on the Wizard of Oz film and the stories that came first. I remember seeing Wicked first, thinking, okay, great songs and all that. Then I read the book and was shocked.
I was flabbergasted.
Same. I did the exact same thing in the exact same order.
I just couldn't believe it. And so it was interesting for me to watch the new films that came out and think, God, this is so divorced from the real meaty, potent politics of that story that he was telling. And it's really been sanitized and romanticized, and characters change. So it kind of loses so much of that really vibrant messaging and meaning. And I think that's the issue with Wuthering Heights. In a similar way, you have this book that many have said it can't be adapted. I mean, a lot of people have tried, and I would argue maybe Andrea Arnold's that she did, I think it was like 2011 or 2012. That one definitely felt more in keeping of the kind of soul of it. But this one, it's taken far more of a wicked approach to the text, which didn't work for me.
It's strange too, but you mentioned things like Clueless, and I often find that, like, if you pull an adaptation out of its original setting, a lot of times you have a better chance of getting it right. Like, you're talking about understanding the spirit of a book and then like being able to sort of transplant that spirit into a different look. Like, that shows to me almost an even better understanding of the source material.
Absolutely, I totally agree. It's and exactly that. It's these timeless stories, but ultimately it's less about, you know, you have the character names and you have the kind of, the plot and journey goes on, but fundamentally, what is it saying? And I think what's interesting, you know, with the Clueless one, it's not called Emma, it's called Clueless. And I think, you know, the quotation marks about Wuthering Heights, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, but if you're really saying, and a lot of people said, well, it's not an adaptation, and I'd really love people to define what they think an adaptation is, because this is exactly what it is.
And I'm glad you flagged the quotations, because that is such a funny stylizing of a title that you look at it and you think, is it just for the poster? Is that just like an aesthetic thing? But the heavy lifting that you, as you say, that those quotes are doing is kind of remarkable.
Yeah. Wuthering Heights. Yeah. That's the only way you can say it.
Right. Technically.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah. But what do you think the movie got right? Did it get anything right? Even the nuts and bolts of it, like the look of the film, the cinematography, maybe, like, was there anything that you felt like, there it is, that's Wuthering Heights?
Yeah, I definitely think the atmosphere, certainly in the Heights estate and of the Yorkshire Moors. I mean, the Yorkshire Moors are gorgeous, but you really get the kind of storminess of them. And I think it was really interesting, you know, there's a lot of sort of imagery in this that is very, in keeping with a very highly sexualized tone that she wants, which I don't necessarily mind, but it kind of starts with a bang and then kind of fizzles out. You know, even the shape of the Wuthering Heights estate is kind of this archway in between, and there's a moment where they're caught in the rain under this very phallic looking kind of gazebo. So I think that was really great. And, you know, if you've loved things like Barry Lyndon and kind of where natural lighting is used with some really great shots and great cinematography. So yeah, you know, I didn't give it a 0.
No. There were 3 points worth of something in there.
3 points, yeah.
Well, Hannah, thanks again for reviewing Wuthering Heights and chatting a little bit more about it with me. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Not the next Wuthering Heights, I hope.
Not the next Wuthering Heights.
Let's just leave it alone.
The next time we get to talk about
Great.
movies. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching all the way to the end. For more movie reviews and more phallic gazebos, I guess, be sure to subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.